That will be a no public comment style hearing, so there will be, they won't hear anything further on that issue. Questions on that? Status reports, creating a handout for voters using the landing and riparian rights owners. Have a batting map, rules of the lake, discussion, possible action. The two main issues I had on that were how to mark depth and distance on the map. I thought it was appropriate to take for the Terra Legis report to have that discussion. And how to account for the sensitive areas around the lake. I did pass around a handout with some reference to the sensitive areas. I think everyone is familiar with that map. And some areas that have been floated around earlier. So one option is 700 foot from shore, 30 foot minimum depth. There is the sort of what I'll call the buoy spot, which is 200 feet from shore, 20 foot minimum depth. Of course, buoys are not depth to them, it's just 200 feet from shore. There's no depth restriction in the ordinance anywhere. So this would add a 20 foot minimum depth. And then the last one is sort of a conglomeration of those with a number of different options. But if we're gonna hand something out, we can just provide a batting map. That is an additional option. So that's a batting map is just a map that shows the depths. We can highlight the sensitive areas, and we can make a recommendation that boaters stay in the deeper areas of the lake, and those with surfing activities stay in the deepest activities of the lake. We can attempt to establish what I would call, I don't know, a surfing area, and keep that into the deepest areas of the lake. This would, of course, be advisory because we do not have the power to make an ordinance. Even if we did, it wouldn't be good for about 120 days. So we're talking about next year. That was an awful lot of talk. Somebody jumped in, and what are our thoughts on this issue?
I would say something that's going to just educate people with where they're having some of the problems that are happening. I wouldn't be give guidance of some sort, even if it's just to direct them in the area of staying in the middle of the lake, knowing where those village spots are. I think would be a huge benefit. Start somewhere by educating people, because if we're really worried about people getting onto the lake, and it's just obviously mainly people that are coming off the lake and coming on the circle with wave runners, with everything. If they know where those areas are, it's definitely going to help out. It's not going to hurt. At least getting people to stay, try to stay in the 20 feet deep. I think will make a big difference.
So the tough part is what numbers do you pick on the map? We're all agreed to have a map. It'd be nice to have a map.
Nice to have a map. It'd be nice to have tests on that.
Right. What do we choose to, here's a map, here's a nice example from Beulah Management that they hand out. It's a little easier for them because the state of Michigan says 500 feet from shore, 30 feet deep. So all they do is take the map and color it in and do that. And we could do something like that, but we need to land on what the distance we're gonna put on this map and what the depth. What do you think, Todd?
So, I mean, really the only option that even would possibly work. I mean, you're looking at, I guess option 2 or 3. 2's get pretty skinny in multiple areas where you're going to actually create more problems with safety. So you start pushing everybody into the center of the lake, then we're advising them to be next to each other. Do we have us but we gave her advice.
I think one of the, when you surf around the internet and look at what lakes are handing out, the lakes that do not have ordinances are handing out. They're saying, don't make repeated passes, wait your turn. That is, if it's too crowded, you have to power down.
Right, and that's what I think that those are definitely things that would have to be added as well. You know, is in order, if we just say stay in this area, and we're creating more of a congestion area.
What is the track record on these other lakes as far as the surfers obeying suggestions? Do we know?
Reports are not positive.
That's great. Yeah, there is a.
I think that a lot of surfers are obeying recommendations. I think we should, if we make a reasonable recommendation, I think the expectation is that the surfers will obey the recommendation. And then we see, and we monitor and see how it's working.
There's one thing we could do is initially, the Quaggy mussel situation, I think is serious. If we could make sure that anyone coming on the lake has a clean boat. And in fact, we should make sure because it's Wisconsin law. And which would mean that the ballast tanks have to be certified that they are clean on the wakeboard boats, or the fishermen in their live boxes and the like. They have to make sure that they are clean. Now, I think the fact is we charge to get on this lake. Puts us in a liable position there. If we're charging people to get on this lake, we should obey the laws of the state of Wisconsin. And therefore, we should demand some sort of proof that you have a clean boat coming onto the lake. So we can start there, very simple. And if you have a wakeboard boat where you can't clean the tank, I guess you shouldn't be on the lake. Or if you're a fisherman and you don't take care of your live box, you should be on the lake. The Quaggy mussel thing is serious. If we get that in this lake, it could really be bad. And it's bad for Lake Geneva, and it's bad for the places that have it.
Are you saying we don't have fire mussels?
On Beulah,
Yes.
We have zero.
I think it's Zika, but that we know of, put it that way. Anyway, I think that's something we could enforce and we should enforce, is that it's the law.
How do we go about enforcing it?
But there is a certification that you can have, I think, on the boats, if you do that, you have to pass, I think and maybe it's impossible to certify a wakeboard boat, which, that is not an excuse though, for not taking action.
No, I understand that, but even how do you even fish and eat it and anything?
Research it, you could take a look at the live box and check it.
So somebody would have to be at the launch
Yes.
every time.
But we are charging to get on the lake. And we already awarded with the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a law, and I think we should obey that. I don't think that's a serious situation with the fishermen. Looking at a few of them right now, what do you guys think?
Well, the bilge is important too. Bilge is, you know,
Bilge,
because if
yeah.
you got a leak in your boat, that could in. But a live well, you can open up, you could actually, you know, visually inspect it and have them wipe it out and dry it before they put it in. I mean, that can be done. Yeah.
If they're completely empty and dry,
Yeah.
you know, they're fine. They'll same with the bilge, you build a drain one, drain all the water around the boat, any boat, in or out water.
But I think that's, we could say, no wakeboard boats coming on lake from off lake. Unless somehow you can prove that you have a clean boat. But I know you can't clean the tanks that easily, the ballast tanks. In fact, the manufacturers indicate that. So that's something that could be done.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not appealing to some people, I understand that. It is the law, and it can be done.
So we'd be talking about manning the launch or closing the launch.
are doing studies. You can't leave with a weed on your boat, you can't enter with a weed on your boat or liable. But they got more participation.
You can't even leave the launch or put your boat on the stream with water.
I think that was kind of why we terminated this, because we had a lack of adults.
So what about the part where the parking lot attendant that wants you up for the certification, and if it's not there, I mean, they just sit up there, I see them, at least on the weekends, and if it's not there, then they just can't launch the boat. I don't know if that's something you want to put on that, but there used to be a time that by the way, there was some, I don't know if it's certified now. But if they're saying that it's a certified, because it does take like 140 days of water to kill the bacteria. And the crab must have stink from doing it, and I think that's been shown, so it is a serious.
You guys have a fairly unique situation where you guys check in and pay. It would be an easy thing to do where you guys check in if they empty bilges, if you had someone check the wells, clean water up at the check-in parking lot, because any bilge is then not running into the lake. So if you've got bilge water from another lake, it's being emptied in the parking lot, it's not necessarily being drained out at the lake.
Yeah, that's what you guys, that's the issue.
Status and what's in waters.
So, one option is increasing staffing, so which I think an ideal option.
There's grant money available through the state for clean wells, clean waters. You have to apply for it by, I think, September for 2026.
I think the good days you get hit are the weekends and then, Fridays are every day you have to do.
Alright, I think we're going to reserve some further comment for a public comment period. Alright, I'll take a
I
while.
just want, how much does the boat launch take in for money? For boats?
I don't know.
Because that way, that's how you're bringing in people for paying for attendance.
That sounds like something I should be lobbying the town for, and like, in my next,
Oh, boy.
I'm sure people are impressed.
Sharon, you get it, Sharon.
Okay, are there further comments on our recommendation for the Brazil? For recommending a zone of operation person? Should we make it for all sports? Let's stick to the initial subject.
Mind your way, so.
Mind, will, are we saying it's for surfing activities only and what depth and distance? When I looked at our video this morning, we cannot do surfing operations in 15 feet of water. The gentleman driving the surfboat told me he could surf at 15 feet anyway because the wave dies. So, I think 15 feet is probably not reasonable. If we are in 20 feet of depth, there are a couple of options. So 200 is essentially already reflected, in most cases, by placement of buoys. And we would need to have some education as to where there's 20 feet. I think there are situations, certainly in Stringers Bridge area, where you are you're more than 200 feet out.
Yeah, that's such a.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, West Bay for sure. Yeah, West Bay.
And then there's situation, the YMCA camp, that's shallow. front of you, commissioners.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good.
But the 200-foot map is very tight. It becomes incredibly tight.
220?
I was looking at the 220, yeah. But in a lot of areas, it will be well marked by our buoys, when, and if buoys get purchased, which is unfortunately their agenda item. Well-designed agenda by the chairman. Any comments?
You may wanna take that some of the Round Lake out of that map, because it really necks down in that area coming out of Barefoot Bay. When somebody's wake surfing from Round Lake across the corner, I don't know where the other boats go.
Yeah. I think that Round Lake, and what I consider Round Lake is between Camp Edwards and the Dove Farm.
The first one.
Barefoot Bay is.
You put it in that when you're talking.
Alright, the area that the area that I'm talking about is right here.
That's right.
That's Barefoot Bay. But this is Round Lake, correct? So this area is, again, it's one of our environmentally sensitive areas. This area, I think most of us know, is very shallow to begin with, and you're going through there. So if this area were excluded from that area, we're also talking about excluding a large portion of the stream and fish area can, that's all West Bay. So this area, there's this little tiny finger that goes in there that's actually about 20 feet deep, but the rest of it is quite shallow. And then the other areas that we were talking about, this area right here, these are called the horns. Right? Alright. Both of these areas, so this area right here is one of the areas where we sampled in the winter, that's about 20 feet deep. Right?
Very little amount of 20 foot.
It
It's
actually,
a pinch point.
it's a pinch point, and this area shoals, but I don't have the fresh, it goes more this way, right?
Yeah, that's another pinch point, but we're off of Jesuit Island, there's a huge flat that comes right up into the lake, so
And you're talking about here.
it's
No,
there.
right there.
There's a pinch point between those two areas down by Dockside and up by Beulah.
Yeah, so if we had, so this is the map, that's obviously still on,
Right.
that has this large area, this large area, we would eliminate this area in the advisory. For the map. And this would be an interim guidance, for surfing operations this summer, put out by the Lake District. This is that little area of shell that I was talking about. And that actually gives us a little bit of a, because we're talking about the point right here, we're almost cutting this off at the point. That would keep most folks out of the shell area, I think we could identify some appropriate landmarks for us. Does that make sense to people?
I think you need to, Rob, I think you need to define the area very simply as a rectangle of some sort, to have it anything good like that. You're not gonna be able to comprehend it. In fact, we have some white borders here, I'd like to hear from them what they think, would be appropriate.
Okay, just curious, what happened with the DNR 200 feet permitting the buoy? Because they're really good about that, we're gonna get less buoys, farther apart, get rid of all the private buoys that are still up there. And I don't know, Mill Lake has some like stratified buoys now, what's up with that?
Millie?
Yeah, Mill Lake, sorry.
Some Marcus and Louise.
Like, I think we gotta revisit that DNR thing for the permitting of the buoy.
If
I think it would be such a good sight line, I don't know what you guys are talking about, triangles. If you did the buoys spaced them out, 200 feet and to all the sensitive areas, that's a good visual. They can't enforce anything if you don't put it at the right, they can't, no DNR is gonna, or the water patrol isn't gonna enforce anything if you keep your buoys at 100 feet or whatever, your buoy is like 50 feet, like, your buoy is 50 feet, that's just ridiculous.
Mine is 200.
No, yours is not 200, I was just there this week, yours is not 200.
Mine's 200.
I didn't talk about yours.
Yeah.
So if you went with the DNR to avoid all the private buoys, I think there would be a nice look. I don't think there's gonna be a bad look.
Is it 20 feet all over 200 or no?
No, that's the problem.
That would be the issue.
All surfboats have a depth, it tells you what the depth is.
Watching like 6 feet this weekend.
Well, one thing I think we need to do is, we need to pick out some money for the capital. Especially, last year, the things barely helped. I mean, every Saturday and Sunday I was out there, there was a little hole. And I feel that we should, like I talked to the chief, he really doesn't wanna take the money, but he would take the money, we put it in some separate account for overtime. And we would use our officers that work here, that know our area, we pay the difference in time and a half. We need to have more patrol, there was no patrol last year.
There was no patrol last weekend.
Okay, I didn't made it out this year,
It was a
so,
disaster yesterday.
I think that's the number one thing that we need to do.
I don't think budget's a problem though, is it?
Of course, budget, no.
But there's
You think we have unlimited funds?
No, but aren't there sufficient funds now?
When I spoke to the chief,
evolve into,
right,
well,
let's
we
get
should
this
be
back
sharing it with them. If not, they're supposed to cover it, that's their district.
Earlier this year, he did say that they were funded 4 weekends, essentially all summer long.
But I'm more,
But I don't know why, refer to you, who's really a.
But now they're on
You can make it up on
I mean, these things are always possible, right? It's just a question of, is there a, relationship with the entity that's doing the governance, in this case, the town or the police department?
So I think if Sheriff approached the town and asked if he could offer some more money for police overtime, town might be receptive to that offer. And,
persuade the chiefs to offer some more funding.
But let's get back to the agenda topic.
Let's get back to the
That's
agenda.
not on the.
So what about, isn't there money out there for like a different type of safety boat that was out there at one point?
The safety boat is not in my,
Okay, but I mean,
I think there would be additional DNR funding. if
that's
we-
what it's DNR funding.
the DNR used to pay overtime for police officers.
Or part of overtime for police officers to patrol more.
Right.
My understanding is that some of that money is gone away.
We can do that, sure.
I think we get some, but we don't get the township. The town takes it.
Town gets it.
So that's something we can ask the town about and find out about, but can we stick to the current agenda item, which is, are we going to put on that, if there is a recommendation?
But I think patrol has something to do with these maps. And if you go to a lot of your lakes, they have 3 separate lakes, just kind of like us. They have more boats, as I was told, per capita than we live around. They have, they're the same, I think they're about the same acreage. And they have 2 patrol boats.
I'm not sure about that.
I think they have a safety boat that is owned by the Lake District.
Yeah.
And then they have either the sheriff, I think it's a sheriff boat. Now, we have 3 separate lakes here. I can tell you, last year, there was hardly any patrol out there. And we're trying to make it like a separate problem here without even enforcing, trying to enforce anything yet. I mean, I know you're saying we're all stuck with Brian, but I think we gotta make sure our police department is funded.
So there's,
Every weekend.
you guys can definitely do an agenda item at the next meeting to kind of make this comprehensive.
Okay.
You don't have to feel like you can make a decision, you can also just take the next meeting as an opportunity to make it a more comprehensive conversation and implementation of the plan.
We will need to have a meeting in relatively short order.
I do agree with Bill, that enforcement is a big thing. And if it's gonna be a burden, we have to address it and fund it, and it can be done. But enforcement would be a big step in the right direction. Just, yesterday, I mean, between 6 and 7 on the lake, it was like a free-for-all. Now, that's no way time. The boats are all over the place, no police. Now, why, I'm not sure, but anyway, that's a problem, but let's address that problem, and then we can fill in the blanks on the rest.
And how does Lauderdale Lakes do that? How do they have 2 bowls? Why can't we have 2 bowls? We own land, look how easy, we can park another boat there. Now, I don't know, shut up.
Because we do have the authority to create a water safety board.
And to have it, either you come to this lake and you bolt with the rules and you bolt right, you're not gonna come back. Right?
There's nothing even on the agenda to table, we're gonna have to call a committee, address the water safety control. Right.
Sure, and obviously outside of the forum, people can discuss and come up with a plan, if you wanna make a committee, you know, subcommittee. So, there are multiple avenues, it just depends what the goal is.
The goal here is to identify what this board can establish a water safety control, what it would take, and what it would cost.
And I would say we should have an agenda item to address that, any informational issues as well as enforcement issues, and collaboration.
And you missed the first aspect of that, which would be to collaborate with the town as a first goal to see if we could obtain more, police presence on the lake. I think that makes the most sense.
But this whole thing is the town's responsibility, so it'd be a good place to start there. And we could supplement it, but that's when you start with the town.
Well, how does Lauderdale Lakes District have their own, pretty sure they have their own safety board. We can't have.
Geneva has one.
We could,
Yeah, Geneva has 6 of them. We don't need 6.
that's a zoo, yeah.
2 would be, you know. 2.
Let's start with 1.
No, I mean, 1.
There was actually an item on the agenda, we want to act on this.
I don't know how many people remember, but about 50 years ago, I'm dating myself a bit, we had a volunteer safety patrol on the lake, which worked with town police board. Consisted of lake residents, volunteered their time in their boat. We had placards that would go to the side of the boat, that said safety patrol. They worked every Saturday, Sunday, and holiday, 3-hour shifts, noon to 3 and 3 to 6. I know I ran it for 2 years. It worked pretty well. You had the ability to write a ticket, although not many were issued, it was mostly a safety thing and warning people. But they did have the ability to issue a citation, which would go through the town court. That cost the town nothing. Except the insurance, the liability insurance on it. I haven't heard anybody discuss that at all. Also at that time, typically the town will hire 2, usually teachers, because they're off all summer. They ran 10-hour shifts, 7 days a week, weather permitting. We had a boat on the water, 20 hours every day, weather permitting. At that time, we had probably 1/3 to 1/4 of the number of boats we presently have on Lake Ontario. What happened? DNR funded a great portion of the money then, and they're still funding at least 50% of it according to the chief. Now,
So I think money is the least important issue, it's, what do we wanna do? And why do we have so much less coverage now than we had 50 years ago? There's probably 3 or 4 times the number of boats on it.
You also look at the population of the lake now, it's mainly second homes. There's not a lot of actually people that live on the lake.
More-
It's changed a lot.
Shirley Vaughn, we used to go back out on her dam, and I went around Lake one day, and we counted boats so we could see, okay? I don't know what's in your backyard or anything else, but the boats we could see, there 1,200 boats. I would guess it's probably 3 or 4 times that today.
We need to bring it back to a meeting here. Sorry. We got an agenda item. It sounds to me like there's no agreement whatsoever on offering any sort of handout. Is that a misstatement, a correct statement? Is there a motion on creating something and is there a motion on conducting business?
I mean, I'd like to, I think we really should be doing something, because if we just sit here and don't do anything, then I don't think the solution is.
But not having patrol is doing nothing.
What's that?
Not having any patrol out there is doing nothing. It's the same thing,
I agree.
So,
it's all last summer, it's a different time, I get that. People want to be police, and, it's hard to recruit people, but we have money that we can help, it's our lake. To take care of the health, the dam, and all that, we need to step up and figure this out. We talk about our little lakes or something, and then, right, I mean, I agree, but I don't, if they know we don't have, everybody knows what a top person's for. Right? Everybody knows that. They know where he is at 6 o'clock, where is he? If they're out there, they're right at the Barefoot Bay, looking for, I mean, we all live it. So we need to preach safety, and we need to have, more education, and we need to have police. I don't see any way around it. You can do anything, you need one of these maps that they can matter.
how about baby steps to the pool? Let's get started now with the guidance, with some form of guidance. We have to have another meeting on water safety issues, cannot get around that.
I bought money for a safety patrol. Or if by double D's.
We've got to have another meeting for it. We can't just.
I'll do it.
All right. Okay, what was your motion?
So I'll move, we'll come up with the map following what we discussed, 200 feet, 20 feet deep. Options at the end, yeah, option 3, the slight modification that we talked about. We'll get some hand tags and post some diagrams on the website. POB will probably put some up.
You're gonna put the sensitive areas too?
Yes.
This is option 3, basically against what, you just heard.
It's not perfect,
It's not
right? But it's a step towards communicating a
So
little more
our big
responsible
neighbors
base.
are more of that. They're definitely,
I know.
30, I mean, you're not even close.
This isn't change, right? It's better than yesterday. That's the point.
Oh, yeah,
Well, we can't just keep talking about it.
So is that your most motion, Chris?
Yeah, yes.
I second it.
Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Who seconded it? Oh, Rick did, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
All in favor of creating a handout, the handout would be along the lines that we discussed, it would take the option 3 map, it would essentially eliminate the area in the protected area, in what is colloquially known as Barefoot Bay. Other than that, it's option 3 as is, except we get rid of the finger in each bay. Yeah. Of the water.
West Bay.
Let's stay.
West Bay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. I will work with Commissioner Kuchek to get that done. 2025. Do you have anything for?
It went out, newsletter's been mailed, we use